Bonjour, bonsoir, dear friends, and welcome to JCB Live. Tonight, we're going to go all the way to the old world, to one of the oldest partners of America, including the French, but this time it's going to be right from London with our very good friend, very charismatic friend, extremely talented friends, Matthew Jukes, radio host, phenomenal writer with the Daily Mail. Can you believe 2 decades writing for this amazing newspaper? He's written over 14 books on the world of wine. I met him very fortunately when he was buying wine for a fabulous and very dynamic restaurant. Then he decided to embark into an amazing wine career to review wines not only from Australia, but as well France and many other countries in the world, including the fantastic Barolo region. And now he started as an entrepreneur, a new venture, Cordiality's Jukes. So it's very exciting. I'm thrilled. We've been friends of 2 decades as well. So it's so fun to be together on this live, direct from London, Mr. Matthew Jukes. So Matthew, I remember we drank a lot of those together. So here we go.
Oh my goodness. My office in my garden is so small that if I did that, I'd break a window without doubt.
Well, a window with a fine burgundy corks is okay, Matthews. So great to see you, Matthew. Tell us about this last crazy year and what have been your biggest achievement besides all the one we're going to talk about before.
Oh gosh, this last year has been nuts. It's a bit of a madhouse over here in London. We're in lockdown again, like you are, I think. Sadly, all of the restaurants are shut, which is the great distress to all of us in the wine business, and a great distress to all of the chefs and the hospitality staff. But we've just managed to pillory government and get ourselves a hospitality representative in government. It happened today.
Yeah.
So this is good news. And look, you know, that now we're going to have better communications with our government, and hopefully they can look favorably on the greatest business of all, the hospitality business.
Very true. And Matthew, this is how you started your life a few decades ago. So we have friends from all over the world tonight, and you have such a dynamic, colorful, and passionate history and resume. Give us a little sense of how you started and how you evolved into becoming such a great writer as well.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, I started 35 years ago in the wine business in Southwest London, where I still live today. I worked for a little wine shop. I think it's a nice place to start, an independent wine shop, learning about the wines of the world. I moved very swiftly on to buying wines for restaurants. And there I went to Bibendum restaurant in the Michelin building in the center of Chelsea. And I wrote the wine list there for 26 years. So a very long tenure in a single position in the wine business. But of course,
that's where we met.
That's where we met. And then I consulted for lots of other restaurants as well, including some really fascinating projects like Amaya, which became a Michelin-starred Indian restaurant, which again, we had a gorgeous dinner there one evening. And hopefully I blew your mind about Indian food and wine.
You opened my mind in a way that I could never fathom.
Brilliant. And then, you know, as well as other consultancies, I started to get into the world of media. So I did a few years on the BBC, presenting a weekly radio show about wine, and then a TV series for Channel 4. And that led very quickly into being asked to write. And of course, being rather an unfortunate student at school, I was very reluctant to write. I didn't have very many qualifications. And some will say I have none today, but I now write an awful lot about wine. You've said a lot of books and a lot of writing in national columns. And I also write some very serious reports each year on my website about Bordeaux, Burgundy, Piemonte and Australia. So yeah, I'm very, very much involved in the wine world. And to answer your first question, Jean-Charles, the biggest regret of 2020 would have been the lack of travel.
Yeah.
The lack of the being able to visit my rock stars, the greatest people in the world, the winemakers who keep my passions flowing, keep me excited about every single day trying to find great wines. So that would be the big sadness. And yeah, it slows you down a little bit, but at the same time, people are so generous in our industry, and they post me bottles of wine from all over the world. You are a perfect case in point. Bottles from all over the world for me to taste and comment on, and so it keeps my juices flowing and my writing flowing, and it keeps my general public full up with fine wines to drink.
Well, very well said, Matthew. So on that note, we should have a toast, because I'm the only one with a bubble. So now we have the Russian River Chardonnay.
Yeah.
We'd love your comment on that. But Matthew, explain us what makes an amazing wine list paired with food, and what's your approach? Because you did not only the Bibendum restaurant, which still today for 26 years, which is one of the most exciting places in London, and obviously Indian food. So explain us the process and how you do it so charismatically.
Well, it's a bit of a fallacy, this. It's very, very easy to write an impressive wine list, because you just go out with a big checkbook and you write checks for all of the expensive, well-known wines. And people say, gosh, that's an impressive wine list. But is that a good wine list? Is it an appropriate wine list for the clientele, for the cuisine, for the sort of the pricing of everything, for the locale, for the occasion, and for the style of the restaurant? And do you know what? So half the time it isn't. And my my métier is very much along the lines of looking at the food first. Yeah. And that's what helped me with Amaya, with Chutney Mary, with Veeraswamy, these legendary Indian restaurants in London, is I just did huge food tastings long before I started thinking about the wine, with the chefs, with the owners, made tasting notes about the food, and then reversed that into the flavors of wine that I thought would fit with these dishes. And then, of course, you can come up with the shape and size of the sort of wines that would work. And with the Indian example is interesting. Indian food hates tannin, and it hates overly oaky flavors.
That's right.
Stringent flavors. It loves juiciness and fruit forward and clean. It loves bright acidity. It loves all of these things. And of course, that actually means that generally that you don't have to spend, masses of money to have fun.
That's right.
But also, you can look globally. You can look at the whole world for your selection. And when you're looking at Barbera from Italy, Dolcetto from Italy, you go down to the south of Italy and look at Primitivo without any oak. You go over to Spain and you drink young Rioja, young Navarra with little oak interference.
That's
you then
right.
have Albarino. You pop over to your part of the world and buy what I call young Zin. I love young Zin. Big, powerful Zin is an occasion wine, but young Zin is an everyday wine. Delicious, spicy nutmeg, blueberries, all of that sort of stuff on the go. And then with whites equally, you just look for unoaked styles of white. So you don't need the big sort of serious Grand Cru Burgundies and the big serious Sonoma Chardonnays. You want the little ones that are on their tiptoes, the light styles. And you want some Sauvignon Blanc, you want some Pinot Grigio, you want some Falangina, you want Fiana, you want those evocative aromatic varieties that pick off the spices involved in the food. And so that's kind of how I do it. And then, you want to run a lean, mean cellar. You don't want to spend too much cash. You want to make money. Otherwise, why are you there? It's a business. You want to pay your suppliers on time. All the boring stuff has to work as well.
For sure.
And then when the critics come in, they go, oh, this is quite professional. They've thought about this. That works. That's not silly. The wines are not too dear, frightening off potential clientele. Or there's a good by the glass selection, and you change it seasonally. You change it with the menus.
So explain us, though, your process as you look at a menu or even a dish.
Yeah.
Dissect it for us, because you have a very unique technique on how you do it and how you bring the wine into play.
Yeah, this is interesting. And it seems to be quite difficult for people to do this. And I sometimes struggle to see why it's difficult, because people doubt their own palates. People say, hey, I'm not a wine expert. How am I supposed to know? And I say, but you are a taste expert, because if I give you a menu, you can choose the food perfectly. And you can tell me what all of these dishes are going to taste like. So, hey, you've got taste buds that work perfectly. All I need you to do is then think about what's the corresponding flavor in a wine.
That's right.
And I can do that very swiftly. I'm very lucky. My mother was a cordon bleu cookery teacher when I was little. She also taught for the great Prue Leith, famous chef over here in the UK.
Yeah.
And I was very open to food as a child, but also I was drinking wine, diluted with a bit of water from a very early age. As you might remember, I lived in Belgium when I was little, and that accounted for my love of Europe and my love of, coming over to France. I have French relations, so I was very much immersed, even though I'm an English boy. I was very immersed in European culture.
You cannot hide that one.
And I just thought, this is easy. I can imagine what roast beef tastes like. I don't mind if there's horseradish on the side. That's a dominant flavor, but actually the dish is all about the beef. Then you've got this, that, and the other on the plate. It looks like it's going to be red. Do I need something that's quite powerful, or is it quite a subtle dish? Is it a pepper steak? Let's rev it up. Is it just a simple grilled steak? You can rev it down a little bit. Some simple rules like that, cooking techniques, etc., really, really help. And also, I suppose, with wines, it's people that they don't understand the wines as well as we do in the wine business, and therefore they find it hard to explain what they want in a restaurant. However, what you should do is flip it. Just look up to the maitre d' or the sommelier who's standing next to you. They're the expert, yeah. And just say, hey, what would you suggest? I need to know three wines that are gonna go with this dish. This is my favorite dish. What are your 3 best wines? And I'll pick one. And then ask them to explain why, and then you'll learn from them. So I do a reverse technique. I think of the dish, the dominant flavors, and then work back from there.
That's a great advice. So on that note, you move from the restaurant world that you still are really deeply involved with, to writing and the BBC, as you said. So give us your experience, and within that world of writing, how did you transition, and what is your favorite book that everybody should have on their shelves? And I can see them behind you right now.
My favorite book, I think, would be my first book I wrote. I was staggered to learn there was no book on the shelf called Wine, just called Wine. They were all called The Atlas of Wine, or The World of Wine, or The Taste of Wine. And so I just wrote a book called Wine by Matthew Jukes. And underneath the subtitle was Everything You Wanted to Know About Wine, but Were Afraid to Ask.
Yep.
So it was this book for people who were just petrified about their lack of knowledge. And I wrote it as a very simple, straightforward guide to wine. I wrote it in a very simple way because I'd never written anything before. This was before I had my Daily Mail column,
Yeah.
And my editor said, this is very engaging, very easy to read. And I thought, that's a good thing, or is that a criticism? I don't know. And she said, no, it sounds like you're talking to me. And I'm like, that's how I write. And of course, I've never changed my style. My style of writing is very much like the spoken word. And so people found it easy to read and hopefully easy to understand. And that book became, a core syllabus for wine courses around the world and all the rest of it. And it gave me the confidence to then go further and start to do books that recommended specific wines and get more deeply into the subject. But unless I'd written, that sort of simple book, that first book, and it become a bestseller, it was a #1 bestseller in the UK, then nobody would have heard of me, and the Daily Mail would not have been on the phone saying, hey, come and work for us.
So what is the most exciting thing within the book that we should all know about?
Well, in all of my books, I have a food and wine matching chapter, which is fundamental. Actually, all of my newspaper columns have food and wine matching, so it's very much a thing that I've done all my life. Yes. I think this is quite a boring answer, but it's quite an amusing one, I think, for you particularly because of your nationality or your dual nationality. The glossary, the explanation of wine terms.
Yeah.
So those terms that you find people throwing out into the ether and going, hey, look how smart I am. And it was explaining those in layman's terms. So, if someone smells a champagne and they say, oh gosh, that's quite autolytic. you go, well, why did you just say that? You sound like a complete fool. You sound like some sort of crusty professor. You're trying to look smart. We don't care. But actually, this is what it means. Or other terms like about the flavor of wine. So when people say, oh, that's a little bit austere. Well, austere is not a flavor term, is it really? Or minerality, people get hung up on that one a lot, don't they? Or just chucking non-wine words in. That's very leathery. Well, there's no leather involved in this. You know, what are you talking about? What does that mean? And great. So I wrote a really quite extensive glossary in my first book. It was a big chapter about how to debunk these explanations, and people loved it. But that's not the answer. The answer is something that I did. I think I might have been one of the first people to do this, but to spell out the grape varieties phonetically.
Ah.
So Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc. Right. So people could, instead of getting, and they still get it wrong every day, yeah? But, you know, you might listen to people say Viognier, listen to people say Albarino, yeah? And people stumble over these words. So I wrote them out phonetically in my book. And then everybody was saying Riesling, not Riesling, and Viognier, not Viognier. And that was a simple thing.
But very important. What is the most exciting word to you in wine description?
Well, you see, I think everything sounds better in French. So équilibré, so balance.
Yes.
Balance and therefore equilibrium, you know, équilibré. I think balance is all in everything in life, particularly in wine, of course. But I think in French, everything sounds better. So équilibré, the balance of a wine is stunning. I love French tasting terms like agrume, meaning citrusy, or tendu, meaning tight or tense. I like these descriptors are better than the English words, because the English words have just one translation, whereas the French words have slightly more. There's a little bit more color, a little bit more theatricality about the French words. So I love that.
Well, those are great words. And what is the most overused word in the wine world that you wish will totally disappear? Maybe you touched on it earlier.
Well, yeah, I think minerality is used a hell of a lot, and it's used incorrectly. I think, listen, there's a lot of pomposity in the wine world. There's a lot of people that sort of puff up their chest and sort of expound about wine, you know, like they're some sort of, you know, serious brain. And actually, they're not really talking about the flavor. They're talking about the label, or the last time they tasted that wine, that was 10 years ago. So what I don't like about wine bores and wine professionals is when they don't talk about the wine in the glass. So there needs to be more truth spoken in the wine world. Yeah. You know, if a wine had 95 points last year, it doesn't need to have 95 points again this year. And it doesn't need to be within 2 or 3 points either side. It could be a disastrous vintage and you need to taste the wine, or it could be an epic wine that will never be made again at that property, in which case it gets a big score. But you've got to taste the wine in the glass. Don't taste the label.
Well, I'm with you. So as you're a man of words, give us your own words on this one.
Oh, listen, what I've sneakily done, Jean-Charles, is I've actually drunk the first glass whilst we've been talking, so I now need to top up. But what I've got is I've got Deloach Russian River Valley Chardonnay 18. And has this bottle had a makeover? Because the label looks beautiful. I remember it having just the breast in the middle before. It seems to be really, really, really smart.
We decided to put the property and the beautiful earth and sky sculpture that we have on the estate, which symbolizes our roots with organic and biodynamic farming and all that. So yes, indeed, a little makeover.
Yeah, and I think it really makes the bottle look fab, and that sets you up. I think that gives you an impression of the property, and it gives you an impression of the vineyards. And I think knowing a tiny bit about this is from a selection of different vineyards, isn't it, that are joined together because of the different characteristics. Well, that's pretty evident in the glass, because it is quite a layered wine. And of course, in single varietals, you know, without having other grapes to play with and add different flavors or dimensions, you actually can only do that by choosing different properties or different soil types or altitudes or whatever. And for that reason, I think this is a wine that harks back to the motherland.
That's it.
And I can sense that there is an impression of not just the soil, the earth, and the aspect, but also how you've managed to capture a cool element in this, and an acid sort of tension in this wine, which underpins the lush fruit.
That's right. Thank you.
And for me, I suppose in tasting terms, if you want some pretty ordinary tasting terms, I mean, the overriding.
No, we need the Matthew Jukes style. No, we don't want ordinary. There's nothing ordinary about you.
But I prefer not to use, you know, fruit tasting notes. But I think I prefer to set the scene about who you should be drinking this with and what you should be drinking it with, and blah blah blah. But this is definitely an occasion wine. It's definitely a main course white wine, and therefore, you know, it's a serious wine. It requires thought. It requires planning. You know, you're looking forward to drinking this wine. It might be in 2 or 3 days' time. It might be the weekend. So it's not a sort of an everyday wine. This is a proper wine. And I think that I would be very conscious of the fact that you know, it's medium weight, but it's pretty intense. It's got a lot of freshness to it, so it can cut through sauces and creamy dishes, etc. And you need to build up your cooking a little bit, because there is some depth of flavor here that's quite substantial. But I'm keen on the honeysuckle notes, and I'm keen on the discrete sort of pear and apple and slight pineapple husk, kind of some of those anti-fruit notes, which are beautiful. Yes. Because the last thing I want is a tropical fruit bowl, you know. And what this has, it has more anti-fruit than fruit. And so that's what makes you think. That's what challenges the palate, makes you salivate, makes you think, wow, what's on my plate? And I would suggest, you know, very simply, I don't know if you can get poulet de Bresse in California, but I would certainly try and find a pretty Olympic chicken and roast it properly. And on the side, some dauphinoise and some nice fresh veg. Make sure you get that chicken gravy up to absolute perfection standard, and then you're good to go. That's what I would serve with. That's what I've served with this wine. And then if Mrs. Jukes inside the house hasn't got that on the go, I'll be very disappointed.
Well, we coming over. This sounds like a fabulous dish with a wine. So, Matthew, before we evolve to other topics of your amazing life, tell us about the book you haven't written yet and you wish to do eventually next, and it could be digital too.
Yeah. So, well, I think after having written physical books, 14 physical books, and then moving with technology, obviously these days, you know, it's pretty easy to self-publish and create quite beautiful pieces of work online. I moved to the digital format, and I haven't really looked back. But your question has slightly pricked my interest here, and it reminds me of a treatment that I've written. I store it on my iPhone, and I make a lot of notes on my iPhone about things that come into my mind. I've always got ideas on the go, and it was also a TV show that I wanted to make that for some reason didn't get cancelled. One of the commissioning editors at the TV station left, and boring. But the book should be the ultimate case. And the ultimate case is the ultimate 12 bottles of wine that have influenced your life.
Oh.
And other wines. So the wines themselves have done the influencing, both where they're from, who has drunk them, where they've drunk them, where they've been poured, which restaurants they've been on the wine lists of, etc., over time, over history, over my life. So it's a book that I will write, and it's a book that I won't write at least, you know, for a few more years until I have more experience. But that will be a physical book. That will not be a digital book. I will make that something.
I like that book.
So the ultimate case.
Because I love this idea. I'm going to actually work on that too, because you gave me just the idea of really rethinking those 12 wines.
Yeah.
And why 12? Because it's the size of the Last Supper.
Because it's the size of a case of wine, as you well know. Okay. And also what I would do is I think I would have a book launch where we would drink the modern vintages of those 12 wines. So we would put those wines on the table. We would invite, some important commentators and some good friends, and we would drink those 12 wines and then see what came of that, and perhaps make that into some sort of film or TV show or something, and make a documentary on what people thought about those wines, what it then compelled them to do.
I love it. This is a great idea. I'm going to work on that myself, not on the book, but obviously on the thinking. So tell us about the one-day wine school that, please, because this is quite amazing in addition to all what you do.
I can't believe you remember that. So One Day Wine School was a philosophy I came up with many, many years ago. And it was because I was always asked by wine lovers, amateur, fans of my writing, etc. How do I learn about wine? But I don't want to go into one of these traditional, stuffy, old school style setups where you have to commit to, like a few hours every Tuesday for several months. I just can't do that in my modern life. And I said, look, I totally understand that. I'm going to do One Day Wine School where we get everything done in a day. They're like, wow, that sounds like a fantastic idea. So what I did was I found an extraordinary venue in London in a very smart hotel.
Yeah.
And invited people, took over one of the big private rooms, sat everyone around the table. We've done it so many times, but from us, I suppose 12 people is the smallest, up to I did it for about 200 one time.
Wow.
It's a big venture. It requires quite a lot of organization, because what people do is they manage to taste their way through 42 bottles of wine over the course of the day. And involved in that is a late lunch. So there's food and wine matching as well. And you cover all of the major grape varieties, all of the major wine regions of the world in the right order, with commentary obviously throughout, beautiful maps, beautiful literature that accompanies it. All of the price points covered. So talking about sourcing for, supermarkets, all the way up to crazy Grand Cru, first growth level as well. Or I'm talking about shipping and some of the boring stuff, like, where should you drink these wines? How should you store wine? And it's all intersprinkled during the day. And so people come along for a croissant bacon sandwich at 9 o'clock in the morning and a cup of coffee, and then they sit down and they get up at about 2:30 in the afternoon and have a massive lunch, which finishes at about 6 o'clock, and then they go home.
That's great.
That's called One Day Wine School, and I love hosting it. I find it
you
so.
You still do it, of course.
Oh yeah. It's an invigorate. It's like being in a rock band or whatever. Where you're the lead singer, but you're doing it for you're doing a whole tour in one day.
And how could people apply for that? Do they go just on your website?
Yeah, so I announce them on my website and take them around the country a little bit. I also do a roadshow for my 100 Best Australian Wines, which is actually much more than just the country, it's around the world. And so all of those information on events is on my website. Unfortunately, at the moment, as you know, this has been nearly 12 months without any events at all. So it's extraordinarily depressing for someone like myself and someone like you, JCB, not being able to get out and strut your stuff on the stage.
Tell me about it. Yeah, but we get to be together this way, which is good. So are you applying the school idea, the one-day program, the 42 wines, digitally as well? Are you thinking of converting it that way?
Okay, so this could work, but it would require using those little tiny bottles and the inert gas and all that sort of stuff, and sending out little packages of bottles and getting everyone coordinated. It could definitely be done. Yeah, I've looked into the costs of doing it are really quite prohibitive, because what you end up doing is you end up saying, look, I'm going to do the wine bit for you, but I can't do the food bit for you in all of your different houses to the standard that I want to. That's why doing it in a hotel or in a serious restaurant really works well. So I've shied away from that. And what I've done is a different format, which is a much shorter format, which is just 6 or 8 wines. And I do that an awful lot, actually, for private clients and corporations, just doing it like this. So
Well, what you do as well, very dynamically, is Wednesday wines.
Wednesday wines, yeah, love it.
So tell us about that, because we had Tuesday wines, but what is Wednesday wines?
Wednesday wines. Wednesday wines is my wife's idea. Amelia said to me, look, you write every Friday in Money Week, you write every Saturday in the Daily Mail, and then you write every month in other publications. But what happens on Wednesdays?
Yeah.
And I said, well, nothing happens on Wednesdays. She said, something should happen on Wednesdays.
I love it.
People have to wait too long between your articles. I thought, okay, that's a good idea. And so I publish a piece called Wednesday Wines, which is free to view for everybody. You don't have to be a member of my website. You don't have to be a friend. So there are two levels of membership on my website. Friend is free. You just sign up and you get a weekly newsletter. Member is £60, and that gives you the big, heavy duty reports, all 4 reports. Sure. In fact, 5 reports. Wednesday Wines is free to anyone who could just come on website and click, and you can read it. And sometimes it's just a silly little piece about, a Muscadet from Marks and Spencer's that costs £7. Yeah. It's like a perfect Muscadet, just exactly what you need. Sometimes the other day I published all of Caroline Frey's Jaboulet wines. Totally intense review of all of the wines with serious notes.
So different themes. Whatever you're in the mood for, this is what happens.
Yeah. So what have I got? Last Wednesday, I did 2. What did I do? A Bandol and a Cornas, and I was talking about wines that respond to earth, wines that taste of earth, wines that have their roots very deeply planted into the soil, such that you can taste it. And it was a thing. There's one, I suppose they were either side of £30, so not everyday wines for most people. But certainly the people that follow me closely will buy both of those wines and taste them. And then, you can buy verticals of them. So I've listed the other vintages that you can buy from the various merchants. So it can be quite nerdy. You could phone up the merchant and say, hey, Matthew wrote up Monsieur Vosges, Cornas, Les Chais. You have 5 different vintages. Can you send me 2 bottles of each wine? I'll put it in my cellar.
Well,
Wednesday Wines can be whatever it wants to be, and it's free to view. So get involved.
Well, this is exciting. I just poured myself the famous Napa Valley Raymond Cabernet, and don't you like this label? This is made for you, a man of texture.
Yes, it is. I presume it's echoing the texture of the wine on the palate, because it's velvety in both ways. This wine.
Look at what I'm doing. Yeah. That's what you assume. Yeah, you got to do that with your tongue. You got to keep practicing, not just on Wednesday,
I think, listen, I haven't tasted this wine before, not this vintage either. So this is a real treat for me. And thank you for sending me this bottle, because I know that this is an expensive wine, sir.
Well, as you taste the wines, and you'll have to tell us what you think of it. Tell us about the next 12 months and what this crazy pandemic has done to us sociologically, emotionally, intellectually, and where do you see the next 12 months in relation, of course, to the wine world and hospitality and who we are?
I think it's been fascinating in that wine has been doing quite well, because people have been inevitably stuck at home a little bit, sad. And they've been drinking a little bit more. Hopefully, I've been trying them to drink a little bit better, fewer bottles, but finer.
That's
which
right.
Is a serious rule in my wine writing. But I think this might be echoed going forwards. And as we hopefully emerge from this pandemic, let's hope within the first, half of 2021, we should be looking to support local experts.
Yeah,
that's the thing. You live where you want to live, you love it, and support the people around you who work extremely hard to bring your community to life. And so I think the old notion of the chef patron will really be strong. And
I love that.
Oh, I love that. And chain restaurants, where there are 100 restaurants in a group that have no figurehead, no particular, nothing real magic about them. they might fade away a little bit. And we'll be giving our hard-earned money to people who are seriously passionate and whose name is above the door.
I love that. I'm with you so much on this because, going to a restaurant, having just one course, but that's the chef recommendation and he's there or she's there. And no, so proximity is what you see as a big trend of 2021. What else do you see as well from a UK perspective defining itself in the next 12 months?
We've had a particularly hard time in the hospitality industry, as everyone has, and I'm hoping that when we bounce back, there will be a bounce back, Jean-Charles. There will be a big bounce, and people will get out there and get enthusiastic again. But I hope that they think about where they're spending their money. I hope that obviously we've had Brexit, so we're going to need to be very, very polite to our cousins over the water. We're going to have to be very generous with our knowledge and with our skills around the world, trying to attract interest. And we're also going to have to be very proud of who we are. And I think all nations have to feel like that and perhaps specialize in what you're good at. And so we have a very small but very vibrant wine making philosophy in the UK, where we're following some sparkling wines, which are proving to be pretty successful. We haven't really necessarily got into the reds yet, but we're doing some dry whites as well. And I think that England will be very proud of its wines going forwards. And it might sound a bit funny to you, coming from France and living in California and the scale of the businesses that you're in charge of. And we're so tiny, but we're still going to be proud of them. We're still going to be proud of our English cheeses and our English asparagus and our English lamb and Welsh lamb and Scottish beef and all those things that we have, because that's what we've got. And I don't think we should be flying asparagus in from Paraguay or Peru or wherever. I think we should be really looking seasonally, not expecting to have strawberries on the shelf every day of the year.
I love this.
I think we should be doing these real heartfelt things as a world. But the UK, we're now in a position where we have to do these things.
Yes,
because we have left Europe.
I'm with you 1,000%. And what you're saying for the UK is obviously to be applied to the rest of the world, eating the season, eating local, encouraging the community, encouraging the local. And talking about encouragement, I want to commend you because from the hospitality world to the writing world to the radio to all what you do digitally and the road shows and everything else, you've embarked on a new venture. And it's a very exciting venture. So Matthew, I commend you for, in addition to all the entrepreneurship you've shown in the creative world of writing and speaking and being such a great host, you have a new business. So tell us about it.
I do. And the business idea started in New York. So America has a little bit to do with firing this up. I did a dinner a few years ago at a very smart restaurant in New York, and I sat next to a lady called Sally Singer, who was the editor of Vogue.com at the time. Very fascinating lady, extraordinarily interesting to talk to. And I said to her, very simply, I just said, "Hey, what's your favorite champagne? What do you drink? The normal wine idiot question that you'd expect me to ask." And she said, "You know what? I don't drink as much as I used to. I don't drink really that much in the week. I save it up for the weekends. And my husband and I have a beautiful bottle of Burgundy, or we have a Super Tuscan, or we have a Cabernet, or we save it up for the weekends. But during the week, I'm flat out with work. I'm going to fashion launches. I'm doing all this, and there's the champagne over there. But if I have a glass, I won't be on top form." And I thought, the wine world is going that way. Professionals are going that way. We're being more careful. We're drinking fewer bottles, but finer bottles, which I said before. And I said, but what do you drink when you're avoiding wine? She said, "Well, there's nothing. It's just like fizzy water. It's rubbish. There's nothing out there." And I said, "Right, I'm going to solve that problem." And so I went back in history, because all the best ideas have been done before.
For sure.
And I looked at a recipe from the 1700s, 1800s called a haymaker's punch. And a haymaker's punch is like when you're scything hay in the fields, the farmer would be really hot and sweaty, and he'd have something to drink to cool him down. And this was basically a cordial that was made with cider vinegar and then leftover fruit and veg, bits and pieces that they didn't have in their cooking. They didn't eat the little knobbly ends and the skin and the bits they didn't want. And then they would just put a bit of honey in it and make it a little bit sweet and make it a bit more palatable. And I thought, this sounds magnificent. I'm going to do this in a modern way.
Wow.
But I'm going to take the sugar level right down. And I'm not going to use 1 or 2 ingredients. I'm going to use 20 ingredients or more. And I'm going to attack this idea from a wine-making head, trying to make a drink with a flavor silhouette that is wine. But there's no grapes involved, no alcohol involved. So I'm writing down all of my tasting notes of my favorite white wines, my favorite red wines, and saying, you know, you taste a little bit of citrus or mandarin or a little bit of peach, or, you know, you sell it with peach with Viognier, you say, you know, lime, you say, and all of these notes. And so I use peaches, limes, you know, mangoes. I use these physical ingredients in the apple cider vinegar. And just played around. It took me about 18 months to come up with an actual method that would work. And then I launched at the beginning of 2020, I launched 2 products.
Yes, sir.
As you're asking,
show us.
Jukes number 6 and Jukes number 1. So
I love it.
This is a white and this is a red. And what you do is you simply dilute them in water, whether it's still or sparkling or tonic water or whatever. But still and sparkling gives you the wine vibe. You drink it out of a wine glass, and the aroma, the flavor, the richness, the length of flavor is that of a wine. It just doesn't taste like a wine. It tastes like a fruit and veg. And
there is alcohol in it.
Zero alcohol. Zero alcohol. And also extremely low calories. So it's about 1/6 of a glass of wine. So you feel very fit and healthy when you're drinking it as well. And the apple cider vinegar is very good for your digestion, very good for your weight, etc.
Is it why you look so healthy and fit and so vibrant and energized today?
I know you're joking. You look the picture of youth, and I feel absolutely exhausted. But you're very kind as always. But yeah, these have been a really good fun. They come in a stunning box. Box with 9 little bottles, and we sell them in America. We sell them in the US already. We sell them across Europe, and we've had a difficult year because of the pandemic, shutting the restaurants down, which is our biggest clientele in London. All the Michelin star restaurants and the private clubs and the wine clubs and the spas and the hotels. There's not much of that going on in London right now, but around the world, private clients, people order off the website, order off jukescordialities.com, and they're getting the box delivered, and they're loving it. So have a look at the website, Jean-Charles. I urge you to look at the website. It's great fun, mate.
Cordialitiesjukes.com, and we're going to write it down.
Yeah, I'm sure. Hope so. But,
no, we will, and you know, have a big announcement for all our friends with us tonight. We will be having it, thanks to Matthew's kindness at the Oakville Wine Merchant. So anybody who wants it can go on Matthew's website, or if you wonder the wine country, you can obviously get it with us as well. And tell us about the number 1 and 6.
Okay. So would you like the official story or the truth?
The whichever. Which one is the most fun?
Well, I've been asked this by a lot of journalists, and so I've been told that my answer isn't very interesting and that I have to have a better answer. So the better answer is that the 1 and the 6, and then I have a rosé which is called number 8, and then I have another red which is called 2. I tell people they're my recipe numbers.
Oh, very good.
No, they're not my recipe numbers. They are numbers that I like. They're nothing other than numbers that I like, because Jean-Charles, there are numbers I don't like. because I'm a funny sort. I don't like certain numbers, and I won't use them on my bottles. So there are gaps in the series because they're just numbers that I never really liked. So
And do they correspond to date of birth, or do they
no,
correspond to
no,
just your favorite numbers?
it's just my favorite numbers, and I have like it's strange. I taste and I think of colors, and I listen to music and I think of colors, and when I taste I think of people, and I personify wines so that I can remember them. I have a different way of remembering flavor and vintages and tasting notes than a lot of people, and I like these numbers, and therefore I'm going to use these numbers because they're my favorites.
I love it. And we share, we have a few wines with numbers as JCB, and
Yeah,
we share one number together is number 8. So we should
yeah,
do our both number 8 together. But
yeah.
I'm very excited that you've elected as well to have all those great ingredients. And it's a non-alcoholic. And I think it's so important. People want to be part of the party sometimes, don't want to drink alcohol. So it's great to have an amazing beverage that we just add water, and here it is.
And
So,
it goes with food. This is the critical thing. Because of my food and wine matching heritage, I've created something you can drink with Michelin star cuisine. And in the glass, it looks like a glass of wine because it's the same color. So you don't feel that you're being ostracized, or you're not playing the game, or you're being a party pooper, You feel that you're really enjoying yourself. You're going to have a nice experience with the food. And so far we've been very lucky. We're very, very happy with our progress in spite of our beautiful hospitality friends being shut down.
and it's made in the UK, right?
Yeah, it's made in Battersea. So I live in Battersea right now. I'm here, and behind Battersea Power Station and Battersea Park in London, we have a beautiful, huge kitchen. It's basically a kitchen, like 100 square meter kitchen with a big fridge and a big freezer. And I have a wonderful lady called Melania, who's an expert pasta maker from Italy. So we're very multinational. Italy, France, Australia, America. My business partner, Jack Holohan, is American. He lives in Connecticut. And me, the Englishman. So we're multicultural, multinational. Yeah, we make it ourselves by hand.
Very exciting. Well, congratulations for now, in addition to everything else, being an entrepreneur. So as you describe this one, I'd love for you to tell us, what is your inspiration and how do you get it? Because you are a man of such phenomenal undertakings. For the last 20 years, we've known each other. Tell us your process and what inspires you.
That's quite a big question, and I'm asked that by a lot of people because I do have quite a lot of energy, and I work quite long hours, and I write quite a lot, and I taste between 30 and 40,000 wines every year. And just that alone is a lot of commitment in time. But what drives me, Jean-Charles, is I'm trying to find the next best wine, and I give every wine a chance. I want every wine to be a winner. Unfortunately, that's not the case, as you know.
Yes.
A lot of wines are very substandard or boring or ordinary. But of the wines that I find, I make my mission to alert people to how beautiful and rewarding these flavors are, in the hope that people perhaps might feel inspired to buy that wine. And when you buy that wine, that makes a tiny chain reaction, which trickles back towards the winery where that wine was born. And that helps that winery to continue on its life and perhaps improve its production, improve its skills, improve the flavor of its wines. And I feel that my job is to do that. My job on behalf of a very large number of people in the UK, thanks to my Daily Mail column, we can help celebrate the greatest wines in the world, and we can help those wineries to continue to do their jobs, the skillful jobs that they do. And I'm right in the middle of this. So the wine flows in one way and the words flow out the other. And I'm happy to be that person for as long as I have the energy. It's a great privilege, believe you me, and certainly someone that came out of school with not very many qualifications and was playing a little bit too much rugby. I now find myself in a position of great privilege, and therefore I take my job very seriously. And I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the search for the next great wine.
I love it. And this is such a great image to everyone that you could do anything you set your mind to.
Oh, for sure.
And you're the prime example of it as a great athlete. Obviously, maybe not as much in school because you were probably going to be very good at it if you put your mind to it, but you had your mind somewhere else, and you're showing us that you can. So maybe just a few words on the wine, and then, because we need to hear, how does the velvet transcribe for you into the glass?
Well, it transcribes perfectly because actually it's given that if you're going to stick velvet on the label, Jean-Charles, you're going to have to give me velvet in the glass. Otherwise, there's huge disappointment. Thankfully, you fulfill your promise, sir. But what I'm excited about, in addition to that, is this is a 2016 vintage, okay? And my knowledge of Californian vintages is not as great as it is of the European vintages, but this is a good vintage. I would say this is a serious vintage.
Yes.
And I can sense that a little bit like your 2018 Chardonnay that we had before, there is a beautiful thread of quite stern acidity underpinning this luxurious fruit. And I sense that again, and I'm not sure about the tech spec on this because I don't have, it's the first time I've seen it, but I'm sure there is some hillside fruit and some valley fruit.
Correct.
And I'm sure that you're combining these two elements cleverly such that you have earthiness and acidity and tension, and then you have lushness and that fruit, that extraordinary plummy blackberry fruit, which I'm getting from the Cabernet.
You got it. And this is exactly true.
And do you have other grape varieties? It's not just Cab, is it?
Cabernet.
Is it all Cabernet?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay. So I was sensing there was a little bit of other stuff in there, but it's a bit, do you know what I respect most about this wine? And it's the fact that you've kept the oak perfectly under control.
Thank you.
And sometimes I get a little bit upset when the oak monkey, I call him, gets hold of the wine and gives it a good old
I'm
shake.
with you, and it's too much, and it's too
much. No, I'm not interested in that, and I'm rather keen on wines that are discreetly oaked, and that comes back to the food analogy about salt and pepper, seasoning, spice. If you get it exactly right, it transforms the dish.
That's right.
And in this sort of wine, if you had under-oaked it, because there is such a thing as under-oaking, you under-oaked it, the fruit would seem a little bit too ebullient, a little bit too strong. If you over-oaked it, I honestly couldn't drink it because I find that flavor very upsetting, and I see a lot of wines still being made in the world that are over-oaked.
I cannot fathom.
And you know because you have this classical palate as well.
Yes.
It's not going to appeal to you, and yet these are wines that get big scores. Some of these wines, big scores, big followings. But this Raymond is exactly à point with the oak, and for me that makes the wine complete. And I'm thrilled about this wine, by the way, because the label promises so much. And I'm thinking, wow, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? And just before we started filming, I didn't taste it. I sniffed it, and I thought, yes.
Well, I hope Mrs. Jukes chicken.
No. And I'm now going to have to send her a message, darling.
Yeah.
In addition to the chicken, we need to get some venison from Scotland immediately.
That's right. So as you're going to go for dinner shortly, Matthew, one last message to everyone around the world. It's January 18.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate to have lived an amazing time over the last decades, and we're very fortunate to envision an incredible future. What would be your big, powerful message to all of us around the world with us tonight?
Okay, so this isn't really my style doing this sort of thing, but I have a message, okay?
Yes.
I'm
coming closer.
I think it's very important. There are two things that I would like to tell you and tell everybody who's watching. I would like to say that treasure your family. It's not like me to be a little bit sentimental, but your family is so precious. So please concentrate on your family, and please extend as much love and attention to them as you can. This last 12 months has proved that you really need to seize the day and make the most of the friendships that you have. But your family is so, so important. And the other thing I think is something that my mother taught me when I was a very little boy, which is to be kind. And I thought it was a very simple and rather ephemeral comment. And yet being kind, you can use that word in any way you want to, yeah? But being kind is so important, and this world needs to be kinder to itself and to each other. And it sounds like I'm preaching. I don't feel uncomfortable doing this, but I ought to, because it's not really my character. But being kind will make a huge difference to this world in 2021. In every aspect of your life, please try to be kind.
I love it. 3 fabulous commandments from Matthew Jukes, dear friends, and great ones, and not to be necessarily expected, knowing you so well. So, yeah. Matthew, thank you immensely. We're going to have to do another session because there's so many other questions we have for you, and we want to learn from you, from your charity work to all the things you do. But I hope you'll be back soon, and maybe we'll do a cordialities Juke tasting as well, so we can demonstrate to the world that you can enjoy a great glass of wine with no alcohol and just water or sparkling water, and it's amazing as well.
Thank you. Yes.
So Matthew, to a great UK year, you know, it's Brexit, and we know it's not easy for the people who don't necessarily believe in that, but we still live in one world. You're welcome always into our world of France, Europe, and the US, and we cannot wait to see you again very soon.
Thank you. So nice to see you. Thank you for spending time with me.
Thank you for spending time with us.
Cheers.